Alright, it's Candace Casey, and it's November 1st at approximately 1 a.m. I'm leaving off on a video that I was sort of interrupted in doing. Um, I want to try to explain in a more coherent fashion how I believe that my relationship with both my mother and my father, even though neither of my parents actually raised me, still had a profound influence on my life. Um, my mom and dad were undoubtedly two very different people. Um, I never actually saw my parents together. My parents were separated a since before I was born. I was told things about the relationship that were all sort of third party, speculation. The only things that I know, like first party, first hand experiences, were things I was told from my father, and even that is from my father's perspective, not from mine. And my mother didn't appear to remember a lot about their relationship. I I didn't really wasn't really formally introduced to my dad until I was about 12 years old. My mother and father had a falling out, and for reasons that I'm not entirely aware of, my mother felt that my father's presence was unwelcome. And even though I didn't know my dad by name, because of the fact that when I was a little girl, I happened to live in Modesto or in that area, I would sometimes see my father and my grandfather in passing, and I didn't know who they were. But later on in life, I I began to visit my father every weekend or every other weekend after my younger sister Tanea was born. The year that I turned 12 was a really profound year for me because my grandmother and grandfather had been my legal guardians up until that point, and my grandfather's, not my grandfather's, but my grandmother's health began deteriorating, and my grandfather really felt that my grandmother was no longer capable of really caring for me and my two younger brothers. She had sort of worn herself out. My grandmother raised most of her brothers and sisters, and then after that she raised 8 children, and then after that she raised 3 of her grandchildren. So my grandmother was pretty tapped out. And during that year, my uncle Roger moved from Phoenix, Arizona. I think either Phoenix, Arizona or Billings, Montana. I can't remember which one he had been in last. To Livingston, California, where we were, and he assumed guardianship of me, and it was a very trying year for all of us, I think. Roger, I think, had lost his business, and he had just sort of hit rock bottom, and it was a fresh start for him. And for us, we weren't really ready. We weren't really prepared for, what was ahead of us. I think for me, the adjustment period wasn't as hard as it was on my youngest brother, Daniel. Even though I had been around my grandmother, and my grandfather my entire life, pretty much, I was sort of used to, from a very young age, because of the fact that my mother was schizophrenic, because of the fact that things were always changing. I was very used to, there being one transition to another, and I transitioned pretty well. So, but although there was an adjustment period when it came to my grades that year, because my grades started to sort of go downhill after I entered 6th grade, and there were a number of things that led to that. My friendships were changing. People that I cared about were moving away, and I was just having a lot of, just the normal growing pains. But what stood out to me during that time was the fact that I finally got to know my sister, and my father gave me a very special gift that year, a gift that he probably doesn't even remember giving me. But when I first met my dad, he, my father's always been really good at artwork. He is a very gifted artist. my father can literally see a picture and draw the picture, by hand, exactly as it looks on another piece of material. And when I was a kid, he drew me a picture of Bambi in the forest with Thumper and the flower in the flower patch. And, it was an exquisite piece of artwork. I mean, it was such a good piece of artwork that a friend of mine who happened to be one of the best artists of the class kept accusing my father of having traced the piece of artwork, and I had to tell him vehemently that no, my father did not trace that. He drew it. And I have seen my father since then on any number of occasions just draw, by heart, Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck or, any number of Disney characters, and he still does this for his foster children. And to me, this to him might just be something that he does, for fun. But it was very special to me that my father drew me that picture of Bambi, and he rolled it up like a scroll, and he put his signature on it and everything. And it was, when we went to Helper School, I never really had stories to tell. But after I met my dad, and I had a picture of my little sister, and I got, I remember that year, for Easter, my father bought me an Easter basket with a bunny, and the little stuffed bunny, you press its stomach, and it would giggle, and it was so fun to me because my friends would toss that bunny around and press its tummy and listen to it giggle, and it was just a very special time, of getting to know my dad and of actually realizing that I had a family outside of the people who I had already known and had already grown up with, knowing that there was another side of my family out there that were also people who cared about me. And my reason for this video is, a lot of times as kids, we have a tendency to think that our parents are perfect or infallible. And I didn't have any of those luxuries as a child. And I, in a way, am very grateful for the fact that neither of my parents was ever placed on a pedestal in my life. And it's very hard for me because I love my mom and I love my dad very much. But the way that I express my love and the way that my parents might view how I express my love to them are two completely different things. With my father, I've always been very forthright, very honest, very open, and I do not think that that is the way my father was raised. I do not think that he was really comfortable expressing himself in that manner, and I still don't think he is. I think that there's a lot of things about my father's childhood that make it where it's difficult for him to express himself. And I can't help but feel that because of that, when we try to communicate, my father is always reading something differently in what I'm telling him than what I'm actually saying. And it's really hard because I don't usually have a problem communicating with people. I, generally speaking, get my point across. But with my dad, it's very difficult because I can, be pouring my heart out to him, telling him one thing, and then when he repeats what he infers that I said, it's something completely different. I'm going to have to redo this video, but